This next demo is on getting started on the Fujitsu ad. So you'll download the Fujitsu folder from Blackboard. If you open it and then rename it, put your last name on it. If you open up the folder, you'll see we have 4 raster files, no vector files. And we have a couple of files in the working folder. We have the directions in there. So this is what you'll be going from. You want to follow these specs. So we'll refer to that as we go. So first thing you want to do is launch InDesign. Make a new InDesign document. And if we look at our handout, it tells us we're going to have facing pages off. We're going to turn on the primary text frame. It's calling it the master text frame on the handout. And the size is 7 by 9. Going to tab to the columns, and we're going to go with 2 columns and a 0.5 half-inch gutter. And pay close attention to the margins because the top, left, and right is a ½ inch. But I'm going to unlink this because the bottom margin is 0.75 inches. And that's what it's going to give us. So you can see we have a bigger margin at the bottom than the rest of the way. Also, since we made a primary text frame, we automatically have a text box in here that's ready to go. And if we look at our handout, that's going to start at 4½ inches from the top. So I'm just going to pull it down. Look at my ruler here. I'm going to pull it down to 4½ inches. Okay. So that is where our text will start. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a rectangle frame from our ½ inch margin down to 3 3/4. So I'm looking at my rulers. And there's my picture box for that. We're going to import the climber. So we'll hit Command D, and we're going to get the climber TIFF and bring him in. And you can see he needs to be resized. It's telling us to size him at 45%. So I'm looking for my little donut. There we go. And I'm going to take this down to 45. And then we'll go ahead and pull him into position. Now, if we take a look at our handout, you can see he's facing the other way. So we need to flip this image. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to reselect the picture box with my black arrow selection tool. And then up here on the control panel is our reflect. See, this will flip horizontal. So we're going to do that. And that flips it. And now we're going to bring it back into position. Okay. Now we know we have the right size, but if we look at our layout, we got to change the crop in here so it looks more like this. So once again, I'm going to use my donut. That'll give me the brown bounding box. And I'm just going to start nudging this guy up. I'm trying to match the crop. Okay, and then I'm going to nudge him over this way. I'm looking at the shadow under his feet. And that looks pretty good for our crop. So we'll go ahead and reselect that. There we go. Now there's a thin roll above and below the image. It's telling us it's a 0.25. You can just draw that with the line tool. I'm just going to click and drag. Just going to eyeball it, hold down Shift. It'll give me a nice straight line. And I'm going to put a stroke on that of, I need to make the Pantone color. And we're looking for 286, so we'll make a new color swatch. And we've done this before. Going to get a spot color and a Pantone solid uncoated. And we're looking for 286, which is a nice deep blue. We'll add that to our swatches. Okay, so that's the color that we made our thin stroke. And we're going to take it down to 0.25. There we go. Okay, it's very thin. Now we're also going to put it on the bottom of the photo. So I'm just going to option drag it down. If I hold down shift, it'll keep it nice and straight. Now I have my two images in there. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is bring in my copy and paste it over to the side. So with nothing selected, I'll hit Command D. And I'm going to go back into my working folder and get the add copy text. We'll place it out here. Okay. Now I'm going to cut and paste Escape the Office, our headline. So Command X, cut that. I'm going to make a text box over my image and Command V, paste. Now we'll go ahead and highlight that. It's all white, so we'll just go to paper on our swatches. And now I want to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to highlight Escape, and it's telling us that we're going to make that 48/55. So we'll go to our character part of our control panel, and I'm going to highlight the point size, go 48, hit Tab, 55, that's our leading. There it is. And then it tells us to make it small caps. So we'll do that on our control panel. Okay. Looks like we got all of that. And this is all in one text frame, as it tells us. So now we're going to highlight the office. And it tells us that is 18/55. Okay. We'll open up our text box so it all fits in there. It also tells us to make that small caps. And then baseline shift. It's also 18/55 small caps. And baseline shift question mark. We're just going to baseline shift it up so it kind of centers off of there. Okay. Now we'll take a look at that and back off a little bit. And I'm going to move that into position. And that should work for us. And I'm going to notice I'm just going to nudge my thin line down a little bit. It's a little far away. Okay. Time to save this. Save early and often. So I'm just going to put my last name on it. And we always float the InDesign file inside our folder. Okay, next thing I want to do is I'm going to highlight without leaving it behind. I'll cut that out of there. Command X. And I'll make a text box for it down here. And Command V. Then Command A, I'm going to select it. I can see it's PMS 286, so I'll go ahead and throw that color on the type. Okay. And looking at the specs, it's 18/20 Palantino. And that reminds me, I want to get this changed first. And Palantino regular. And 18/20. And we're going to make that small caps. Yeah, that should work in there. Just nudge it over a little bit. And that reminds me that this type here needs to be changed to Palantino. So we'll go ahead and do that. Here we go. And that actually fits in there a little bit better now. Okay, so that's where we are. We'll go ahead and hit W, take a look at it. Okay, so far so good. See, this roll here should just nudge up a little. All right, now if you look at our handout, next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the rest of our body copy in this these two columns. And notice this type is justified. Okay, so you're going to want to do that. And when you do justified, it's be a little tricky to get these text wraps to look exactly like this. You want to get it as close as you can. So here's that text box. I'm just going to click in there. And actually, I'm going to select everything except this type at the bottom because we're going to use that later. So I'm going to highlight all this and hit Command X, cut. Place my insertion point into my text frame and Command V, paste. Okay. Then I'll hit Command A, select all. We're going to switch this copy to Optima. Now, Optima and Palatino are system fonts. They should be in your on your laptop. Okay, and as I said, we're going to make that justified, and that's basically flush left, flush right. Okay, we're going to do a 2-line drop cap on the first paragraph, and I'll bring up my invisibles option, Command I. So I'm just going to highlight the first paragraph, and on the paragraph part of our control panel, find drop cap, and we'll make that a 2-line drop cap. And it's telling us to go ahead and make that blue also, the drop cap that is. Make that our Pantone. And then we'll select it all. And the body copy should be 10/16 Optima. So back into our character part of our control panel, and go 10/16. Okay. Now if you do that, your first paragraph should end with the road being justified. And that's what we're seeing on our handout. Okay, right there. So I'd like you to try to get that to happen. The rest of these breaks don't have to be perfect like this because it's very difficult doing justified, but you need to get it to fit in there. Okay, so here we are. I'll hit Command S, go ahead and save this again. Okay, I'm going to back off a little bit. All right, next thing I'm going to do is telling us to put a blue text frame at the bottom. That's why we had the 3/4 inch margin at the bottom, so we have a little bit more room for it. So I'm going to get my type tool, and it tells us it's 7 by 7 wide. So I'm just going to drag it. Looks like my mouse has died on me in the middle of the demo. Well, we'll just keep going. So I'm going to select that, and up on our control panel, we'll go up here and we'll go 7 wide, hit tab, and we're going to make it 1/4 inch deep, 0.25. Okay, there it is. Now we'll go ahead and get this copy we were saving. And we're going to highlight it with the type tool. Command X, cut. And we'll paste it into our new text box. Command V, paste. Okay, then I'm going to hit Command A. I'm going to look at the specs. It's telling us to make it 9/10 Helvetica. So let's go ahead and, by the way, if notice there is overflow text here, But if you just put your insertion point in this text box and hit Command A, it'll also select the text that you don't see, which is important. So we're going to switch this to Helvetica. And we're going to make it 9/10. It's telling us to center it, so we'll go into the paragraph part of our control panel and do center alignments. Then we want to center it up and down. And you should remember that's Command B, text frame options, and we'll go ahead and put that on center vertically. There we go. We're going to color it white, which is paper, and we're going to make the text box our 286. Make sure we do that on the fill. There we go. It's also telling us in there to add a copyright symbol in place of this bullet here. So we'll go ahead and zoom in on that. Take my type tool and highlight the bullet. And it tells us if we hit Option G, that will replace it with a copyright. Okay, it's looking pretty good. We'll hit Command S to save it. If you notice on your handout, take a look at it. There's a black stroke in the center of our two columns. So I'm going to put that in there. And just like before, I'll just use the line tool. I'll just shift drag it. And we're going to color that black. And it's also 0.25 hairline. Okay. Now there's a image that goes in here with some text wrap on it. So we'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to put a rectangle frame in here. We'll hit Command D. And I'm going to go back into our raster folder and get the spot art TIFF. Now we know that we can color a black and white TIFF in InDesign if we use our direct selection tool. So we'll go ahead and make him, you see right now it's black, we'll make him 286. Okay, and we'll reselect them. And I'm going to pull this in some. If you notice on the handout, it's not giving us a size for the picture box. We're just going to eyeball it. So I'm going to nudge him over a little bit. And it tells us there's a text wrap with a 0 inset. So Option Command W. And we're just going to do text wrap on a bounding box. Okay. And we'll take a look at this, and we'll pull this down some. If we look at our handout, we have 5 lines above that image. So trying to get that working. Now notice here I have an extra hard return here. I want to get rid of that. And I'm going to put a space after in here just to kick that down a little bit. Okay. And if you get this to end up around somewhere around window-based installation, that'll work for you. That's close as you need to get it. Okay. Noticing one thing, text wrap is messing with my text down here. So I could pull this up a little bit. Okay. Or if you remember, if we go into this text box and hit Command B, we can tell it to ignore text wrap. And that's what it'll do. And that's what we want. Oops. So that should be enough to get started on this. Next thing, you're going to drop an image up in here and do a text wrap on that. It gives you the specs, okay? And make sure you pay attention to the crop and just try to get it to work. As I said, you don't have to get every line to break exactly, but you do need to get it to fit. There's also a Fujitsu logo that'll be coming down here. And it tells us that that's scaled at 25%. And just get that working in there. Okay. As I said, there's one more picture frame up here. Command D. So product photo. And looks like that comes in the same size. Just pay close attention to the crop. You want to kind of match what's there. And on your text wrap on there, it tells us top left and right is point. So we're going to unlink this. So top left and right is 0.1. And our bottom one, so we have this unlinked. Our bottom one is 0, which is what it is now. Then you can kind of just nudge this guy around so you get 2 lines above. And that's working pretty good. Last thing you would need to do is just mess with your text wrap on here, and you'll be good to go. So that is how you go about creating this Fujitsu ad. Don't forget justified copy on your body card.